So I will be moderating the next 80 minutes. We've got for that opening session two times. The first session will cover the impact of Apple and HCE in the M-payment ecosystem. And the second session will refer to the way we have to boosting customer and merchant adoption at point of sale. So for this first session, I'm really glad to welcome today Patrick Gotye, who is a General Manager, Emerging Retail Services at PayPal. Jeremy Nichols, Executive Director, Mobile at Visa Europe. Koichi Tagawa, who is the Chairman of the NFC Forum. And Chris Kangas, Head of Contactless Payment for Europe, MasterCard. So before we start that debate together, maybe each of you want to introduce yourself a little bit, and then I will ask Tagawa-san to give a first keynote on where we are from the NFC Forum point of view. So Patrick.
Sure. Actually, if you don't mind, I have a couple of pages that I'd like to show.
No, tu te présentes une seconde, et puis tu ça après.
Okay. All right. So I'm Patrick Gotye. I usually get invited. I'm GM of Emerging Retail Services at PayPal, which is a division that deals with a lot of incubation and right now focuses a lot on demand generation. I've been around NFC for a little while. I think the first time I worked on NFC, started to take the plunge, was circa early 2004. So I've seen this goat rodeo a few times. Usually I get invited to those sessions. I think people hope that I'm going to finally confess to my sins of apostasy and embrace the religion of NFC. And I've actually been generally fairly critical about how the industry has approached NFC. I think that we have squandered some unique opportunities to create delightful consumer experiences by focusing on things such as what's the technology and who's on top and who's controlling what, and not focusing on the value proposition. So a lot of what I will talk about is indeed, where is the business model? And business model starts with a pain point, an acute pain point that will reflect somebody willing to do something for you, either the merchant willing to deploy and willing to pay for transactions, and or the consumer willing to learn something else, which is akin to an investment, and then willing to use the product. I think if we don't start the discussion from there, the rest really is besides the point.
Thank you. Well, short introduction, Jeremy.
Yes.
On who you are and what you like to do.
Thank you very much. So good afternoon, Jeremy Nichols. I'm Executive Director of Mobile at Visa Europe. I'm fairly new into the mobile scene from a product standpoint, because having only kind of moved into the mobile role in the last 3-4 months or so, although I have been working very actively in my prior roles at Visa in terms of heading up commercial development activities across Europe. So my kind of focus and for today, and my focus in my kind of role, is very much how I can work with partners and enable partners and facilitate partners to drive mass adoption of mobile payments. I think very exciting times now. And I think it's a good time to actually sort of get involved in mobile, because I think it's only around the corner that it actually all starts to happen. So, that's me.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Koichi Tagawa, Chairman of the NFC Forum. I belong to Sony, therefore my focus point probably is more consumer-centric than probably other businesses. But anyway, it's my honor that the NFC World Congress has invited me again this year. I remember that in the very early days, the argument was always chicken and egg, which means lots of interest in the industry, but there are no devices and no services. Now today, at least we have the devices and many applications already, but we still have a lot more to go do. And I'm really happy in seeing the enthusiasm around here. The NFC Forum is a standards setting body, I should say, and we are a nonprofit organization. So our business model is not to make ourselves profit, but we have to make a platform where the industry partners will be able to enjoy businesses over NFC and make the consumers happy. Thank you very much.
Okay. Hi, I'm Chris Kangas from MasterCard, working in the emerging payments product area, covering Europe. And first of all, congratulations to all of you for making it through the Air France strike and finding your way here. Good to have somebody in the audience today. My opening comments are, I was here last year at this conference, and it was a very grim and sad kind of atmosphere, actually. I don't know if these guys were here too, but it was all about how hard this is, how getting NFC payments to work on phones involves so many different players with different standards and so on. It seemed like everybody was in a very sad place. And now since that time, we've had some major news events happening with host card emulation. We've had, of course, the Apple Pay story. And in the background, MasterCard has been building acceptance for NFC, which has grown dramatically even in the last year. And now for cards, it's quite a happy story. We have contactless heavily in use in many countries, more than 35 countries in the region. So I guess for this session, hopefully we have a little bit happier faces, that we see some interesting new developments that will carry us on into the next year and take advantage of all these new opportunities.
Thank you. So for starting the first part of the discussion, Mr. Tagawa-san, maybe you can present from your seat, because they have changed the camera, so you will be sitting just in front of the camera. I will be running your slides if you like.
All right. Whichever is fine for me. Thank you. I just prepared a couple of slides to get the discussion started and have a fundamental understanding of what really, at least the NFC Forum thinks what NFC is. The first slide, please. Right now, according to our marketing and PR staff, there are more than 275 mobile smartphones worldwide carrying NFC, which is great already. And analysts are telling us that there are already, there are more than 500 million units available in the market. And their predictions say that by 2018, there will be 1.2 billion or more. And of course, the recent announcement by a specific company probably will add more fuel to this argument. Next slide, please. However, let's think more about what NFC really is, because NFC is originally the contactless plastic card coming into your mobile phone was the idea. However, if it's a plastic card, it is so thin and light, you can carry multiple of them in your leather wallet to carry around. And that's not a problem. Even though the applications and security or whatsoever could be fragmented, you just carry the necessary cards and it wouldn't bother you traveling or doing your everyday life. However, when you have the simple idea of putting this card into your mobile phone, then it becomes an issue if everything was fragmented. Because depending on where you are going, what you are going to do, you may have to carry a different phone just for the sake of NFC because they do not interoperate. So back more than 10 years ago, the idea came across of putting this plastic contactless card into the phone. However, then we thought that no, it has to be globally interoperable, or otherwise there have to be so many different versions of NFC phones so that you have to carry different ones depending on what you want to do, where you want to go. And that will not be an industry, is what we figured. So then the engineers at the beginning figured that, okay, it should be the communication layer of the contactless cards, and applications and security should be something that will be residing on top of this communication layer. And as long as this communication layer is open and global and supports all kinds of applications, we thought that at least for the handsets, that will create a whole new industry. And that's where the NFC Forum started 10 years ago. Now, further, at that time, the engineers thought that the cards don't have power supply, but the cards emulated in a phone, the phone has power supply, and you can do more creative things. For instance, reverse it so that then your phone becomes a reader-writer, or the phone can talk directly via NFC to another NFC phone, which we call the peer-to-peer mode. So we have the card mode, the reader-writer mode, and the peer-to-peer mode already available in the NFC Forum specifications. What is happening in the market is shown on this slide right now. The consumer electronics category. This is an area where mainly the smartphone is used as a reader-writer to get connectivity information from a tag for that particular Bluetooth or Wi-Fi connection. So for instance, by a touch to a Bluetooth speaker, you get connected. Of course, you can disconnect it in the, when you want to turn it off also. And the idea, therefore, is then once it is connected, then it is handed over to the broadband technology, Bluetooth, for audio enjoyment or whatever. Recently, printer companies have started putting this NFC handover capability into their printers. So the idea is that you touch your printer, and then the printer gets connected to your smartphone, and your pictures on the phone can be printed almost instantly, automatically on your consumer device printer. So this consumer electronics segment was more probably an easier installation for the industry, and already it is soaring, is what we think at the NFC Forum. For instance, the company I work at, Sony, we have started doing this about 2 years ago. Today, we have over 150 models that carry this NFC handover capability. And a similar thing is happening in the healthcare segment, where your household devices that do your measurements, physical measurements, and that can be transferred via NFC to your smartphone or whatever. And also the transport segment is also an important part, because already transport operators have been using contactless worldwide. And these two segments are really starting to take off, and not to the extent of the consumer electronics yet, but it is very close to getting there, and it's a very attractive application. And then on the bottom two boxes, I have shown payment and retail, and I think this is more the focus of this session here today. Here, I think there are new opportunities, new challenges, but honestly, as of today, compared to the other three segments, consumer electronics, healthcare, and transport, unfortunately, the aircraft is not in real takeoff mode yet, but I think things are getting ready so that we are now finally ready for takeoff. So we have over 500 million devices out in the market. Predictions say that in 2018 it will reach 1.2 billion or more. But we definitely need to get more applications and services in place, and moreover, importantly, is payment and retail, and also connected to those will be transport. These segments will have to take off rapidly, so that I will no longer receive the question of chicken and eggs. We have devices, and we have services and applications, and then finally, I will not have to explain what NFC is to my wife. That's my goal. Thank you.
Excellent. That's really a good omen to see so many use cases for NFC. So now it's really time to focus on the mobile payment aspect of that, and would be really interesting to to know what is the current vision of Visa and MasterCard on that. Maybe Jeremy, you can start and sharing with us how you are focusing on mobile payments, NFC, and how you are seeing a massive adoption for that from your point of view.
Sure. Okay. So as regards mobile payment, we see it as being hugely important for Visa and hugely important for our banks that make up Visa. We make a prediction that by 2020 we expect to have over 50% of our transactions coming from mobile devices. I think we may be actually shortly revising that forecast upwards. So very much we put a lot of work into trying to transition the world of the plastic world of today into the mobile world of tomorrow. Our focus is really, as I said earlier, been about enabling our banks, facilitating mobile payments by investing in different technology platforms and working with different partners to try to bring different options into market, which people can actually then use for their own kind of programs. So we've been agnostic on technology as regards mobile payments, and I think for good reason, because we have seen the kind of just recent developments, I guess, which are hugely exciting as far as Apple's entry into the market are concerned. And that has been a major event in mobile payments. The arrival of HCE beforehand was also presented it was a new kind of technology breakthrough and allowed a different way of doing things. So I think for us to have been sort of stuck on one technology would have been the wrong approach. We're still hugely supportive of SIM. But very much, we're sort of backing the sort of secure element on handset, secure element on a handset with tokenization as being a new approach, and of course, cloud-based payments with HCE. Our very much our mission is the sort of Martini principle in terms of that Visa should be working on on any device for any payment, anytime, anywhere. And that's very much, we're about sort of how can we get mass adoption of mobile payment now. We've been putting a lot of work into building out the contactless infrastructure. Obviously, in the last couple of weeks, we had a major announcement from Apple, but last week we had a major announcement in the UK as regarding the Tube network. So that's been fantastic to see that the world's I think largest transit system. And one of the world's largest transit systems actually embrace this technology across all its multiple different formats. But that's our focus, as I say, is how can we drive incremental share of transactions by enabling for Visa and for our banks, by enabling those technologies to be adopted and put into market in order to give a much better consumer experience, a much better retail experience as well in terms of taking friction out of the retail the shopping experience. So it's very exciting times for us.
Thank you, Jeremy. Chris, maybe you want to add some point?
Sure. I just echo a little bit what Jeremy says in terms of building out opportunities for consumers to use contactless and also use their mobile phone for remote payments as well. This is the core of MasterCard's strategy, and the TFL in particular is such a great story, and I had the chance to go up there last week to be part of the launch, and now you can use your normal MasterCard, Visa, or American Express contactless card to be able to tap and pay. But I used my smartphone with NFC on board with a prepaid card, and I had a smile on my face from ear to ear all day long because it worked so well. And I actually topped up while I was on the train coming into London, so I did that in real time because my balance was low. And then I could check out my transaction history. And so I know we talk about having loads of extra services and coupons and other value-added services connected with the wallet, but even just a simple proposition that works beautifully and gives me the same advantages without having to top up an Oyster card, that really was a wow moment for me. And it's on my mobile phone, so using NFC. So just having my own personal experience with my own products and seeing how they work and how they make me happy, and hopefully that's how consumers feel when they experience this. But as I break down where MasterCard's focus is right now in this space, we're really supporting the different models of how to access NFC in the phone for payments. Secure element is still very important. Working with telcos and enabling their digital wallets is still a priority. We've been working on many projects this year with telcos. Many of the largest and most important projects that have launched in the last couple of years have been led by telcos. So they've been really spearheading and enabling in the space and putting momentum behind there. So of course we want to continue to work with them, and of course they're working with the secure element that's on the SIM. The embedded secure element is now the Apple model, as everybody now knows. But also there are plenty of other phones that have embedded secure elements in them. So we're working with Sony, we're working with Philips, HTC, and Samsung in different markets. MasterCard has built a provisioning capability, but we also have other TSMs that are acting as middlemen. I remember last year here, Gemalto was talking about how they were building TSM hub solution to try to make it easier for banks to connect in a simpler way so that they could reach a broader spectrum of telcos' digital wallets. So that's still important for us. And in terms of embedded secure element, MasterCard has made connections into Samsung and into some of these other embedded secure elements to try to facilitate the provisioning. And then host card emulation is the final one, of course, the cloud solution. And everybody knows we announced in February a specification and a pilot with Banco Sabadell, which has been very successful and has proven out this new approach. And so now our specs are ready for banks and wallet providers to use. So this is really the scope, the broad spectrum of the technologies that we're looking at in the space of NFC right now.
Yes, thank you. So now, Patrick, you're from PayPal. You have announced recently that PayPal will go for NFC and HCE model beside the Beacon initiative. I guess you expect to leverage the EMV contactless infrastructure. I know you have prepared some slides. I apologize for MasterCard, but Patrick asked me to start the PowerPoint earlier in time, really. So Patrick, if you want to present your slide.
Yeah, and this is really to kind of frame a little bit the perspective that we have, because I think we're coming at this from a slightly different angle than Visa and MasterCard, because we actually occupy a different space in the value chain, right? And so, PayPal, you may or may not know PayPal. PayPal is, in terms of customer base, about 50% larger than American Express. And so we have reach, but we're also very focused, obviously, on connected commerce. $1 in $6 transacted online is going to come through PayPal. And mobile has been a very, very important area of focus for us. Going back about 6 years, it's been an area where we've put enormous type of emphasis. We do everything mobile first because we anticipated, as is happening, that the connected life of consumers would migrate from the den in the office onto the pocket and the mobile. And in mobile, we lump together phones and tablets as well. As you can tell from this chart, our business is now roughly 15% composed of mobile, and this is up from 3% just 3 years ago and virtually nothing 5 years ago. We're seeing very steep migration of transactions to mobile. And you'll notice that I didn't say mobile how, right? Was it proximity or is it online and so on? And that is because we don't think the consumer really makes any difference. And from a consumer perspective, it's about what do I do with my mobile phone. 75% of smartphone owners use their phone to make purchases in the context of making purchases. And there's a number of use cases, and I've just extracted here on the very recent study by Adobe as to what consumers do with them. If I had put the entire laundry list, what you would find out is not a great amount of statistical separation between the first 15 use cases. I think number 15 was 38 or 37% of users. And what you see is a variety of use cases that all have to do one way or another with finding more information that I have available, whether it's price, product information, promotions, location of the stores, and so on. The mobile is really a companion during the shopping journey. This is important for us because we're in the payments business, of course, but we think that when you focus just on payments, you're focusing on the last frame of the shopping journey. And as I said when I started, what is really key is to make sure that we are focusing on the pain point and the friction points for consumers and merchants in order to generate value. And when we do that, then what will happen at checkout is going to be a consequence of what happened before. So I want to share this with you, and this is a simulated view of the US, right? And I anticipated since Apple, since a lot of excitement and so on, is how should we look at NFC, right? So, in the upper left here, you have basically just the percentage of penetration of handsets in the US with NFC and the percentage of penetration of merchants. The merchant piece makes some assumption as to the correlated deployment of NFC and the EMV upgrade that is happening in the US. And then you see two scenarios from a consumer adoption standpoint based on the value proposition. The low-end scenario is largely reflective of what has been happening with contactless payment, which I actually deployed in the US in 2004. And the upper-end scenario is not a contactless, but is reflective of what we've seen sometimes in terms of speed of adoption by consumer of new mobile enhanced services. When you bring those together, you see two very different possible futures for the use of NFC in the context of retail. And I would submit that the difference between the two is largely a function of what is the value proposition for the consumer and the merchant. In other words, how do we integrate that checkout function, NFC enable, with the things that happened before? If you would, please. And so for us, as a consequence, we've looked at, the question here was, what are you going to do? Are you adopting NFC and HCE and so on? We've always stated that our strategy for mobile is to focus on the use cases, not necessarily focus on the technology, and we're very technology agnostic from that standpoint. We've deployed QR codes in the US, in Canada, in Australia, and a number of other UK, and Australia, a number of other countries. But we've also been validating NFC implementation as far back as 2011 to really look at the various approaches that would make sense from an NFC standpoint in the context of connecting NFC with cloud-enabled services. So the discussion for us is really about how do you create a seamless experience from a consumer, whether they are remotely accessing a service or accessing it in store or in a physical environment. And how to do this in a way also that is not bound to a particular screen. Consumers have more than one screen. As a matter of fact, the number of screens is multiplying on a per capita basis. And that the technology, whether the modality, whether QR or NFC or beacon, is and within those particular type of technologies, the actual platform implementation is largely going to be driven by how do you solve consumer and merchant problem. Because if you don't, it doesn't matter what we're discussing in this room. It will not be adopted. And I'd like to remind everybody that in 2004, I was in the conferences, we predicted that we would have massive adoption by 2007. And by 2007, it was by massive adoption by 2010. And by 2010, it was massive adoption by 2013. And I could dig up. I actually did it 3 years ago. I could dig up the slides that show this. And so I think we're far too focused in the industry on, here's what the number is, and the future is bright. And we're focused far too little on the core business model and the beginning of a successful business model is not who controls what and what is the technology and the specification and interoperability. No, the core beginning, the important beginning of a successful business model is what problem are we solving for whom? What's the value of that solution? And therefore, what will they be willing to pay for that? And that's why we're focusing on use cases at PayPal.
Thank you, Patrick. Well, the applause in the room means certainly that all those people here, they believe you're right on the fact that consumer and merchant adoption is really the key driver for a huge takeoff. And we have here several players that can do that game. Certainly PayPal is one of those. The second part of the session will be covering the comparison between Apple Pay and HCE, mainly supported by Google and by transition also PayPal, but in another way, technically speaking. We'd like you to cover are those two approach, HCE and Apple, friends or enemy? I mean, they are supporting the market takeoff, but on the other hand, we know that Apple and Google, they are terrible enemies and they are really big challenge at stake. Who wants to get this question? Should we oppose them or not?
If I find to talk first, I mean, so clearly they are rival companies in the kind of mobile digital space, and they are competing technologies. But I think actually they are where they help each other. Particularly, I think one of the great things about Apple's involvement is actually that then it will help consumers to kind of get mobile in terms of because the proposition is a very good one, and actually it kind of removes the kind of question marks which were in people's minds perhaps about the viability of NFC. And it starts to sort of, I think they're both kind of accelerants in terms of the market. So I think that they're rival kind of solutions, but actually they're both important developments in terms of giving more options for banks to kind of to get involved in order to be able to kind of bring mobile propositions to market. A broader comment. I think it's kind of interesting how we're all technology agnostic. We're also actually focused, absolutely on propositions and what's in it for the customer, what's in it for the retailer, and it has to work on all those levels. Otherwise, it's not really going to go anywhere. I think our research kind of shows that customers absolutely, when they get access to mobile payment solutions, they really like them, they really engage with them. We've been slaving away. Colleagues on the end of the table have been also sort of doing their bit in terms of actually building out that acceptance and working with retailers over a number of years to lay down that infrastructure so that then you can get to it is very much that kind of that chicken and egg piece, but you can actually bring to market a solution which someone can actually get a great user experience, but they can actually also use it places as well. And just coming back to the question, the move by Apple and the move by Google, and I expect to see other moves from other kind of big players. It's kind of it adds to that momentum, and I think that it has been probably every year there's been a new number and a new date, and when it becomes big. But I kind of think this time it's different anyway.
Yeah, I guess I could comment as well to say yes, indeed. I feel like these two companies are, in a way, complementing each other. They're addressing different market groups, right? Those that have an iPhone, of course, they would be the ones eligible to have the Apple Pay service. What about the ones that don't have that product? They need something else. So what can we bring as an industry to fill in those gaps? And so everybody on the table here has a different solution for that. And MasterCard is no different in the digital space, with MasterPass being a way to make easy payments for browser-based and in-app shopping with one click, basically, similar kind of Amazon one-click idea, but with our brand and sort of available on a broad spectrum. Apple Pay with their in-app one-click buying approach is similar to what they're already doing with iTunes shopping themselves today, before in the pre-Apple Pay era. So I really believe that it's not about frenemies or enemies, really. It's more about just filling in gaps in the market with solutions that address the devices that people have in their hands, so that there's ultimately choice. No matter how the customer wants to pay, there's something available for them.
Well, there is a big difference between Apple Pay and Google, because with Android device, you can use a cloud-based solution based on HCE. You can have a device that is also SIM-based for other kind of services, depending what the ecosystem wish. While Apple is really proprietary solution, you cannot do anything else. There's maybe one player in that table that can offer something that is across the two. Patrick, do you believe PayPal can offer the NFC payment service both on Apple and Google?
Well, I think it's always very risky at a conference to make any form of announcement, a pre-announcement, and so on. So I'm going to sidestep, but I'll offer, however, a couple of thoughts. For me, the biggest aspect, the most interesting aspect of what both Google with HCE and Apple announced was less how they implemented NFC and more how it opened up tokenization as really a core method of enabling payments in both the online and the offline realm. And this is important. If for no other reason than the successful payment franchise, no matter whose brand it is built on trust. And if you've watched the news lately, we see lots of data breaches, and that can undermine trust. So the tokenization is really key. Tokenization and what it enables in terms of in-app payment is really the building block for us of some of the omni-channel use cases that both retailers and consumers are calling for. This is where we see lots of value. Reinventing what exists right now usually rarely comes with a great economic advantage, especially for businesses that need scale. But enabling new use cases, in particular where you have pent-up demand, that's where you can create tremendous value. So we think in-app with tokenization is key to go. This is not just because it was announced last week by Apple. We spent $800 million to buy Braintree last year specifically for that purpose. And that, to me, is where really things are going to come together. After that, whether we support or how do we support one particular handset model versus another, I want to say that's not what's important. 3G is when smartphones started to take off. Consumers didn't know this is a CDMA, this is a TDMA, and they shouldn't have to know. We should make that transparent for them. Right? They were able to find okay, how do I basically do more with my phone? That's how we're approaching it. And where we see value from a commercial standpoint, from a retail standpoint, is an omni-channel use case, and the demand there is extraordinary, both from a consumer standpoint and a retailer standpoint. And that's why, from my standpoint, my perspective, the key aspects of the announcements that have been made over the last 12 months is really the fast approaching wave of tokenization, much more than NFC per se.
Okay, we are arriving end of time for this session. I will have a last question. Then we can take one or two questions in the room. While the last point on this session is related to massive adoption. We have seen in the past when we announced Google was supporting NFC and launching the Google Wallet. It took a lot of time. Frankly, it doesn't sound like a big success today. But in the meantime, the NFC infrastructure, they are seriously progressing. Many plastic cards have been issued by bank. Many merchants, they are converting their terminal in contactless stuff. So I would like each of you really briefly to share your view for the future. How do you believe that market will really reach this goal of a big bang and massive adoption? Maybe Koichi Tagawa, you can start with this if you like. Massive adoption.
Massive adoption. Well, as of today, if you look at the number of devices available, the annual count is like 300 to 500 million. This is 1 million units produced every day. This is massive, I would say, already. And I think this will continue to increase. Why is it already massive? Because NFC is not just payments, it has other use cases, and I think consumers are starting to recognize that and love that. And day by day, there are new announcements about new capabilities. But these are all applications, I would say, that do not leverage on existing infrastructure around you with contactless cards. The contactless cards for payments or transport, the idea of going that into the mobile phone usually is for ease of use. However, you are leveraging on the infrastructure that is already there. I have not seen any payment or transport operator offering NFC that requires a new infrastructure, because I think all of us know very well in the payment space and transport space especially that getting the infrastructure out and available is most important. What I would like to say probably, although I'm not a real expert like the other experts here, is that I think the contactless infrastructure for cards and mobile finally is becoming widely, massively available, and that is going to be the important thing for these applications and services also going into mobile with NFC. So that is my answer to your question about massive adoption. François?
Thank you very much. Thank you. Chris?
I think I have a couple of comments here that I think will help. I agree very much with Patrick on the tokenization model. Making this as safe as can be and using this tokenization method will really help that bring confidence in the market. I spent a huge part of my year last year working with the German data privacy regulators about contactless and data exposure and things like that. So having tokens in there instead of your actual card account number on digital devices is hugely important. I can say also that making it easier to get your credentials onto the devices. This is something that MasterCard has been working on for the last 2 years and has now launched with Apple Pay as a first sort of endpoint digital enablement service, which is basically an on-behalf service that allows issuers to connect into and tokenize, and then we digitize the card credentials into the Apple Pay phone. So MasterCard is sort of playing a middleman sort of role here, and this kind of model to make it easier for the consumer to have the payment solution in a more ubiquitous way is very important, I think. In Europe, since this is my territory, I guess I can say I'm very proud to say we have a huge amount of contactless acceptance across the region. And even though I'm not allowed to say what the number actually is, I can say globally we have 2.5 million acceptance points for contactless, and Europe makes up a huge share of that. And with marquee merchants, acceptance points like the Transport for London, but also many of the top brands, some of them surprising, like Starbucks, who's active with their own solution in the US, but here in Europe they're using NFC. So it's taking these kind of big brand names who care about their own quality of the customer experience inside their store to adopt the contactless technology and then help the customer, pull the customer into trying it out. That's where we've seen success in driving mass adoption. So, some insights.
In terms of mass adoption, I'll come back to the same kind of theme in terms of actually the work we've been doing, and similar to Chris's comments in terms of on acceptance. I think we actually do have a very viable acceptance infrastructure now in a number of markets. We have 1.8 million terminals which are contactless enabled in Europe. So it's interesting when kind of Tim Cook made his comments about the 200,000 places you could use it in the States. Well, ready and waiting in Europe with almost kind of 2 million. And that includes, that's big name kind of retailers, your Tesco's, your Carrefour's, your Court-Glaze, your Marks and Spencer's and so on, as well as your sort of, your everyday items. So I think, we can now, we're now at the point where everyday retail brands have actually are taking this payment technology, embracing it. For their own different reasons. It could be, for some in the food industry, it's actually a more hygienic one. In others, it's actually as a cost dimension, or it's just kind of the speed and convenience of the and taking kind of friction out of that shopping experience. So I think then that's the kind of the focus. We're now very viable in a number of markets. We are. In some markets, such as Poland, we are approaching kind of 50% of our kind of terminals are contactless enabled, and that makes it, that makes the whole thing viable in terms of actually being able to launch a proposition into the market where people can use in an everyday basis. There are obviously other dimensions to it. The commercial case, it's obviously needs to be right, but I think that's the start point, and it's been a long journey. In terms of getting to this point, some 8 years or so, I can actually kind of recall of really kind of trying to get contactless going. Finally, I think we're at the point where it's entirely viable.
So you're going to be surprised. I agree and disagree. Woo, what's new? Okay, so I think it's very helpful to look at the story of Google Wallet to learn something from it. And if you really go to the root case of what are some of the reasons why Google Wallet did not take off, I think it had to do with the health of the ecosystem around it. And for a variety of reasons, some of the key players that needed to really come on board did not. And so what this tells me is that, do we have certain key components that are required for adoption or use by the consumers that are happening, like handsets, like a convergence of back office infrastructure, for instance, with tokenization? Absolutely. Do we have generally a consumer willingness to try this, if for no other reason that we are in the area of gesture-based user interface? Absolutely. However, back to the question of use case and value proposition, I don't think that the suppliers of the solution, whether they be handsets or network, MNOs or payment networks and so on, those are not the ones that will create the spark for ignition. We can remove some of the barriers, but the spark for ignition will come from the provider of use cases. And there, I think the health of the developer ecosystem, the people who build the apps, the people who are going to create the next Uber, is going to be really what will drive the type of adoption curve that I showed earlier, whether it's the low one or the high one. So, if anything, we've seen with smartphones, there are certain things that consumers just, to almost everybody's surprise, adopt very quickly, right? Think Flappy Bird, or Angry Bird for that matter. I don't think anybody from the traditional video game industry would have predicted the kind of incredible success those titles had, and yet they did. And so I think for us, what we have to do is to accept to embrace the chaos. And for people in payment, this is hard to do because we're in the business of reducing chaos. We want everything to be very predictable, because we have to deal with fraud, we have to deal with compliance, we have to deal with deployment with a variety of partners, and as a consequence, operating excellence has been bred into our DNA to the nth degree. And yet, to ignite adoption, we're going to have to embrace a really broad range of developers, and that means accepting a certain element of chaos in the month and years to come as the path for a Darwinian use case to emerge and to really capture the imagination of retailers and consumers. That, to me, is how we're going to see adoption really happen.
Okay, thank you very much. So really disruptive new model is arriving with NFC. Are there one or two questions from the room? Very briefly, because we're coming late in time. Who is raising hand? Can you present yourself and you here?
There's a microphone coming.
Oh, there's a microphone.
Hello,
Okay.
I'm Kurt Schmidt from Nexperts. I have a question to Tagawa-san, and this is related to Apple and NFC. Apple is claiming to be NFC compatible. They are claiming on their website with the technical specifications, there's listed NFC. If I recall the NFC forum specifications, at least, you need to support reader-writer mode and peer-to-peer mode to carry an NFC logo or to allow to brand a device capable of being NFC. So far, Apple has only implemented proprietary contactless based on ISO 14443. So what is NFC Forum going to do with Apple? Is Apple coming on board? Will Apple really be NFC compatible and then open the possibilities to use NFC? Because currently I think they should not be allowed to be listed as NFC compliant device.
I personally have not seen, honestly, what is claimed in the Apple website or product descriptions. However, we, the NFC Forum, as you point out, it is very correct that we have 3 operational modes: card emulation, reader-writer, and peer-to-peer. And also there is a data format called NDEF, which enables the data exchange between the 3 modes, and that has been very well appreciated by the industry. And as of today, I have no idea how Apple has implemented or not the parts of the NFC Forum specifications, and I'm not in a position, therefore, to probably straightforwardly answer your question. However, looking at what is appearing in the media, I think, as you point out, it is card emulation only as of today, and possibly type A and B only. That is, however, the good news, however, there is over the past several years, they didn't even have NFC. So now they have chosen to do some kind of proximity user interaction. Now, for the proximity user interaction, they didn't have to pick 13.56 megahertz. They could have chosen other ways, like some countries in the world, they have picked different frequencies for different purposes, and they claimed that also to be NFC. But those did not fly. And Apple, they have chosen to pick 13.56 megahertz, which means, regardless of how you call it, they have opened the doors for future opportunities. And I don't know their plans. I cannot, figure out what they are going to do in the future. But my hope is that now that they have opened the doors, and especially at 13.56 megahertz, they are welcome to do the other applications that the NFC Forum specifications enable you to do. The NFC Forum is an open association, and if they want to join, they are welcome to join, of course. And I have seen recently that they have joined Global Platform, which is doing specifications for secure access on the phone or other devices at the full member level, which is the highest member level of Global Platform. And they are an open association too. So I think and the NFC Forum has a liaison partnership with the global platform, and of course with other entities like GSMA and all the important players in this space. So I am hoping that they will someday join the NFC Forum also, as we are an open, anyone can join, anyone is welcome to join, but including them, I hope they will join and enjoy the full extent of all the NFC capabilities. And specifically, what is NFC? I think there is probably not a clear definition. The way the NFC Forum claims is that the NFC Forum devices are the NFC Forum based on NFC Forum specifications. And that is where we are. Did I answer your question correctly?
Yes, I understand.
I expect so, because we are really late, Kurt. But maybe you can continue the discussion with Tagawa-san after the panel.
One additional very short question. Anyone knowing in the room if NFC on Apple is supporting single wire protocol, meaning that SIM-based secure elements could work in the future? Anyone knowing if this line has been designed into Apple iPhone 6? Don't know. No knowledge.
No. We have heard from some MNOs that they were not, but you never know with Apple. Okay, there was another question here, I guess. Yeah, but this will be the last one for this panel.
Hello, Michel-Ange Camille from Worldline. I'd like to ask to Visa and MasterCard whether tokenization will indeed come to Europe and when, and what reaction do you expect from issuers? What support do you expect from issuers?
Yes, tokenization will come to Europe, and I'll come back to you on when. But yes, for sure, and it's obviously a fundamental part of the Apple proposition. But we see it having being multiple use cases that you can use tokenization for. So it's just a question of the timing, really.
Same for MasterCard. We've built a global platform to do tokenization. So theoretically, banks, issuers from anywhere in the world should be able to plug into that platform, the digital enablement platform. And we've already got standards and requirements out around the world. So banks are actively working on installing those mandates to be able to connect into that platform. So it's already in motion.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much. This is closing that first session. Please applause for the panel.
Nice to meet you.
And it's time for the second session to start with, I think, 4 people